Welcome back to Defining Moments. I'm Suzanne Quast, and today we're going to talk about Adderall. Adderall is a prescription drug that is set to become a $17.5 billion industry by 2020. Now look, guys, I'm not saying there isn't a time and place for it, but we're also at a time when it is being overused and is overprescribed. Well, my guest today has firsthand experience with Adderall. She was on it for 13 years and now no longer uses it. Her name is Vanessa Fitzgerald, and she is a certified nutritionist and a health coach who now specializes in helping people get off the medication safely. Today, we're going to talk about the ins and outs of the drug and also tips for how to detox. Here are her moments. Watching colors drift away. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I have to say, I know, and I don't know if this is just an LA thing, but I know so many people who use Adderall. Some are prescribed, some aren't. You know, it's kind of an ongoing joke among some of my friends. They're like, how do you think I got through med school or nursing school?
Right.
Or I worked for 2 tech startups and so many people there use Adderall. Do you think that there's an Adderall epidemic that's happening in the United States?
Well, yes, there's an opioid epidemic.
Yes.
And Adderall is one ingredient away from meth. So basically, if you're holding an Adderall prescription, you're a fancy meth head. You're just no better than the person laying on the street in the corner. You're just have your shit. Can I say shit?
Yes, you can.
You have your stuff pulled together. But that being said, it's really hard. The statistics actually aren't accurate because a lot of people are buying the drug off the street or from friends. It is also on the black market as people do it as drug deals, as well as hold prescription. So some of my clients that are detoxing off don't even hold a prescription for the drug. And they're giving it to kids as young as 5 to 9 years old.
Which is kind of crazy.
They're just crazy. It's amphetamine.
And when you say one ingredient away from meth, what is the ingredient?
Methyl.
Methyl. Okay. Well, something I talk a lot about here on the show is the idea of fearlessly owning your story. And I really think you embody that. You're so honest and raw and authentic, and your message really resonates with a lot of people. And you're helping so many people. I'm just curious, was there a moment or a series of moments where you realized that you were addicted to Adderall?
Well, it's hard a lot of people don't see these things as addictions when doctors put you on these medications for a purpose. So when I was put on it at 17, and then I would hide it. It's a shameful drug. I don't know anybody that is proud of their Adderall usage. Because it says amphetamine on the bottle, and you're breaking it up throughout the day, basically popping pills all day long unless you have an extended time release. So when I got into my 20s and I was not only using it during the day, but using it to go out at night, using it to function the next day to exercise, that's when I realized I was addicted. Not only did I know that, I also wouldn't share it with other people. It's not like I was telling my friends I was on Adderall. I didn't tell my parents that I was still on Adderall. Things like that. Wasn't telling people that I dated that I was on Adderall.
So it was kind of a dirty little secret that you had.
100%.
And then you were pretty open about your path to getting better and how that was kind of challenging at times. But I feel like you did all of that, and now here you are to probably give people the tools and the keys and a solution to help them with Adderall.
100%, because it's not a detox. It's actually a serious drug withdrawal. So
so you literally go through physical withdrawal?
Yeah, so it's the same thing as detoxing off of, there's only 2 detoxes you can die from in life. Everybody thinks it's heroin, but it's actually alcohol and benzodiazepines. Benzos are Xanax, Ativan, Valium, things like that. But it's just like detoxing off of any other drug. So rather than it being linear, like you would think a cleanse does, the further you're away from sugar, for example, the less you crave it. It's not how this works. It's a withdrawal, which means that it's more of a roller coaster ride. So Adderall basically tells your brain to take a backseat to building dopamine. So you have a hard time with dopamine production when you go off of it. Also, your cognitive function slows down tremendously because, again, your brain is taking a back seat to how it's supposed to perform naturally. Not to mention it messes with your entire endocrine system because your adrenals are actually part of your endocrine system. So your adrenals get completely fried. A lot of stuff happens. Sometimes people have insomnia after going off. Sometimes they sleep much better. It really depends on the person.
Wow. Well, this brings me to, I have viewer questions. Thank you guys to everybody who submitted. I want to obviously add as much value as I can for you guys, and this is really helpful. One woman said, I'm a successful working woman in a demanding job, and I'm on a high amount of Adderall a day, milligrams a day. I'm worried about stopping cold turkey and not being able to function at work. Do I need to take a couple weeks off to get off of it, or can I still do it and work?
It would depend on the amount of milligrams. So I always say if you are at 50 milligrams and above, then I would wean down to 40 and then go cold turkey. I'm always a fan of people going cold turkey because that way they don't actually go back. I find the ones that wean themselves don't ever actually get off of it. So I had someone come to me recently that's on 90 milligrams. That's a very high dose.
Yeah.
If I were to say, no, just stop tomorrow, they're going to face plant. So in order to stop the face planting, I just want them to wean down to at least 40, and then we can talk about cold turkey. But yes, I am a big advocate of taking some time off. A week or two off, just to at least to sleep, because the best cure to heal our adrenals is actually sleep. So to sleep when we need to sleep, so that we're not forcing ourselves. Sometimes when we force ourselves and we're tired and we're so used to overriding that, hey, I'm tired, you get into this panic attack mode. And then thus becomes like the anxiety, the heart palpitations, all that fun stuff. So
then what do you suggest, like as far as what supplements, what to eat? So this particular person should get down to at least 40 milligrams. So somebody at 40 milligrams to be able to take a week or two off. And then what is the plan from there?
So I say eliminate all sugar and grains right away. Dairy too, because it's mucus producing and that'll slow down the gut. You want to make sure that you're pooping every day. So if you're not pooping every day, then depending on the client, I'll incorporate certain supplements to help get their bowels moving, whether it's a probiotic or maybe a digestive enzyme, something to make the system move. The more bogged down your gut is, the more bogged down your brain's going to be. So we really have to clean up the diet first and foremost. Then I'm a big proponent of not listening to things like rock music, pop music, nothing that spikes your dopamine levels. We want to slowly build oxytocin. So classical music is really excellent for building oxytocin in the brain. Things like that. Exercise is really important. So if you're not a big exerciser because you're so used to taking Adderall and maybe not eating when you're on a high dose, you need to start exercising because that's what also builds dopamine, gets the blood flowing, really good for human growth hormones. You can help start rebuilding certain cells in your body. And then we can talk about supplementation. Different people have different side effects. Some people come off, they have crazy amounts of anxiety, so I have to supplement them. Some people get really tired, some people get really hungry, so it really just depends on the person.
And then is there a mental aspect or mental health aspect to this as well that you encourage people to, I guess, pursue in addition to all the other stuff?
Meaning?
Like, I don't know, therapy.
Therapy.
Like meditation.
So therapy, I
find
most people on high amounts of Adderall are probably in therapy already. And if they're not, perhaps they should be, because your brain's overactive anyways. So most likely stuff in your life is not going so well.
Yeah.
So I do suggest therapy if there is more of an energy block. So a lot of people tell themselves the story of, I can't go off because I have ADD, or I can't go off because I won't be able to function without it. That's a story you've convinced yourself of.
Yep.
And until you decide that's not my truth, then you're never going to actually succeed doing it. So if you are energetically blocked and I can't get you there, then yeah, you should talk to a therapist and really go deeper into what's really happening.
Then for children, is it the same approach? I mean, as far as like what to eat, exercise, or probably making them more active?
Yeah, so children, for sure, it's all about what to eat. But my biggest thing is, which I eventually like to champion, especially when I decide to become a parent one day, is we don't celebrate kids learning differences in school. So not all kids are going to learn the same. We don't fit into the same box. We're not all going to take the same standardized test and get straight A's. And that's when kids tend to fail. So think about it this way. If you were to have given like Mick Jagger or like a David Bowie Adderall as a child, they wouldn't have become the amazing creative like geniuses that they are today or were, because at the end of the day, when you give a kid that's, let's say, super talented with music and maybe they're drumming on their desk all day long and they can't pay attention to like math, and then the teacher's like, they need something to focus, put them on Adderall, you'll see their personality shift from this to this. And that's just not the same child. That's literally robbing them of possibly what gives them joy. We have to figure out a way to help the school system. But in the meantime, in order to get rid of that, especially with the ADHD, because that's a hyperactivity, diet is first and foremost. So no sodas, sugar, definitely cut out gluten. It's shown to be an inflammatory for a lot of different cognitive behavioral issues, things like autism.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I had somebody write this in and to, about the kids and you talking about learning and stuff. She said, my child uses Adderall and it's been immensely helpful. Do you think that this drug works for certain people?
Yes, 100%. I mean, it does its job until it doesn't work anymore. So I find people that are on it for prolonged periods of time, it tends to backfire. Like it did very well for me in high school. Definitely raised my grades about, a grade or two after I started it. But at the end of the day, it also made me highly neurotic and insecure in other areas because the drug is an amphetamine and you're giving it to children. Like, how are they supposed to know how to function on an amphetamine?
You're right. Their little nervous systems.
Yeah, their nervous systems are completely tweaked. So yeah, they're going to do better in school for sure. But that'll happen until it stops happening anymore. And then certain organs will start to shut down. Their adrenals, let's say on a weekend, they decide not to take it one day, they'll probably sleep all day long.
So you do think that some parents, that if their kid has ADHD, that it can be helpful?
It can be helpful, but at the same time, I again want to champion parents to really try the alternative methods first. Like, do your research. Let's really try and tighten up the diet. And nowadays, when you're like, oh, well, they're a kid, it's so difficult, it's actually not. Your kid is not making money. You're in charge of what goes in their mouth at home, and then you're in charge of how much money they get when they go to school and what they're able to eat. Yes, they're going to make certain choices here and there, but we want to try and educate our children, not as the enemy or make them feel different, but try to educate them in like, hey, you're going to feel better if we do this, and let's try and supplement things like rhodiola or lion's mane or different things to help support the adrenals, L-theanine to help calm down certain parts of the brain, ashwagandha. These are all great things for anti-stress, but also cognitive function.
And you can give those to kids?
Yeah.
Well, she had a follow-up question, which is something you kind of touched on too, is if you think that it's helpful, when and if do you take your child off of the medication or even yourself off? Like, when do you feel like, okay, this is no longer working, like you said?
I mean, if you're ready for the challenge with your child, then just take your child off the medication and just start. I also don't like to start people off the medication until their diet's clean. So I usually like to clean up the diet first because they're going to have an easier time off of it. Less symptoms are going to arise, like falling asleep during the middle of the day or feeling cranky and irritable or having an anxiety attack or stuffing your face. As long as we can get the diet under control somewhat, then I would say that's the ideal time to stop the medication. Start with the diet. Start cleaning out the gut. Get the poops going. Get it all doing like just functioning really nicely. Because like I said, this is the more bogged down your gut is. Your gut's your second brain, and it's so trendy these days. Everybody's talking about it.
I'm getting a microbiome tested.
Yeah, see?
It's very trendy. Yeah. You brought up how when you were in high school, you suffered from, insecurities, anxiety, depression. And you also talk about how it affects relationships. What do you think the effect is Adderall has on your intimate relationships in your life?
For me personally, Adderall would make me more nitpicky. So I would as a woman, I already overanalyze things.
I think most of us
As
do.
it is. So that drug just made me overanalyze things like triple the amount. It was insane. Not only that, I would nitpick my partner. So I would focus so much, let's say I was at work or at school, and then when you're done doing a task, you need something to hyper focus on. So what do I hyper focus on? The person closest to me. And then all of a sudden it's not my issues, it's your issues. And then you start projecting all of it and nitpicking, because again, it's like another project to focus on. Not only that, it just makes you confidently insecure, I think is the best way to describe it. You feel like I'm Wonder Woman, I can take over the world, but at the same time you have this like inward trembling inside that just doesn't go away because your nervous system is just kind of like this all the time.
You feel like that's like you feel crazy.
Yeah, you start to feel a little nuts, but you don't realize it while you're in the moment until you step outside of it and go, okay, why is the same thing happening over and over again? Then I've had men that I've detoxed off Adderall in New York, and all of a sudden their fiancés like them better.
Really?
Yeah, because they're not so apathetic or removed or easy to anger. You know, men who are building companies or trying to make it in this world, men, their work really is their purpose. We worry about body image and things like that. They worry about, you know, putting food on the table maybe, and like how are they going to be the man and not be perceived as weak. So when they're on the drug, I find that it makes them quicker to react. So if there's a comment that's thrown their way or something happens, they're quicker to snap.
What does it do to your testosterone?
Testosterone, I usually see, so it actually not boosts it, but you'll find sometimes that they'll feel like they're more sexually active. If they're on a very high dose of Adderall, they'll have no sex drive. But coming off of Adderall, a lot of people in general, their sex drive gets affected, because what happens is like you're getting a constant hit of dopamine all day long. So when that dopamine plateaus and like you're leveled out, you don't have that initial hit of adrenaline. And since you're an adrenaline junkie, you just kind of become like blasé for a period of time, where your libido is just not kicked into high gear because you don't have this adrenaline rush going all the time. So you have to figure out how to truly connect with somebody in a different way sexually.
That could actually be fun.
Totally. It's a cool way of we're human beings. We need to connect on a heart level. And when you're on Adderall, you're just constantly up in your head. So you're connecting with people up here, which is temporary. Like we know with Eckhart Tolle and all these sorts of things, like the mind is almost not real. It's not us. The self is the soul. It's inside.
I love him, by the way.
I know, right?
He's the best. I love him on all of our Oprah.
That's what I'm listening to. I listen to that all the time. It's great.
Some of them on repeat.
Yep.
It's so good. Okay, well, I have to ask you, what do you think of the Netflix documentary? Why could I not say that? Documentary, Take Your Pills.
So I thought, it's funny, one of the producers reached out to me on Instagram. She's amazing. She's so sweet. I thought it was really well done, but very neutral. And
really?
Yeah, because at the end it's like, maybe take it, maybe don't. So when she reached out to me, I was like, hey, loved your documentary. Sequel? Like maybe we make another one. But I understand, because when I did more research, it looks like the family is highly involved in politics, pharmaceutical company, politics, everybody's in bed together. So you can't really, go out and say, like, don't take this. It's an amphetamine.
That's so interesting, because the backlash on that was so great that there were so many people who felt like it was totally one-sided.
Yeah.
That they were basically, exaggerating stories of people in order to push an agenda of that Adderall is awful.
Really?
There was so many people that came out who use Adderall, and even people, parents of kids who use it, and was like, this saved my life. This saved my kid's life. And
I don't know about saving lives.
Maybe I added that a little.
Maybe saving grades. I think when people get upset like that, they're triggered. So when you're that viscerally upset about anything, it's triggering something, and maybe something that rang true, especially when it comes to something like an amphetamine. It's not an antibiotic, like it's not an antidepressant or a bipolar medication. It's just amphetamine. Like, that's not changing lives. It's making you focus more, maybe making you eat less, making you stay up longer.
Yeah. But what I guess are we really talking about?
Yeah.
But there were people who were really upset about it.
Of course, because like I said, it's highly triggering. I triggered a lot of people when I went on calling everybody like fancy meth heads, and I'm sure a lot of people will be triggered by this conversation right now. I get triggered by certain things in life. It just is what it is.
Fancy method. Okay, so I'm going to kind of switch gears because I saw this on your social media and I'm genuinely interested in this. And I maybe you apply this also your Adderall patients as well. But you talk about nutrition response testing.
Yes.
What is that?
So nutrition response testing is a modality where we search for the underlying causes of symptoms. So I test for things like parasite, bacteria, fungus, heavy metal, food allergies. I find what's irritating the body, and then I use whole food supplements and homeopathic remedies to bring the body back into balance. It's very difficult to explain if you haven't actually experienced it, but I want to say that it's similar to nutrition mixed with like an applied kinesiology.
Okay.
So just as reflexology works, like when you hit the knee at the doctor and your leg twitches, it's sort of similar to that, as when I press on an organ point, your arm will go weak.
So then you know there's something wrong with that organ.
With that organ, exactly. So it's like acupuncture runs on certain organ and meridian points, same thing.
Huh. And so do people come to you then with some kind of ailment or a disease and that they want to have fixed, or do they just come to you and say, I'm not feeling great and I want to figure this out?
Anything chronic. So if you are depressed, anxious, you have IBS, you have an autoimmune disorder, chronic skin rash, earaches, whatever it is, anything chronic we deal with in person. Anything else I do phone, because you don't really need to see me in person unless you have something that's chronic.
Like chronic fatigue, because I suffer with chronic fatigue.
Yep, chronic fatigue is another thing, for sure. I have a lot of people that come in with chronic fatigue, self-diagnosed and some clinically diagnosed, and then we work towards that, and then they're not fatigued anymore.
Okay, to end all of this, if you have somebody that comes to you that wants to get healthy, what would you tell them to do first? Go to the doctor, go to get a microbiome testing? Where do they start, and what are 3 steps to do to get healthy?
Keep a food journal. Okay. I don't change anything. I want them to keep a food journal. It tracks everything that enters their body and everything that exits. Again, this includes pooping. And I want to know the consistency, what it looks like, the whole 9. So that's step number 1. So we can actually see where are these, there's a place to track your symptoms as well. So I want to see where are the symptoms coming from, after which meals, and what are we eating. So that's step 1. Let's just learn what we're actually putting into our body and start to be cognizant of it. Number 2, drink more water. We should be drinking half of our weight in ounces, and it has to be at least filtered water. Don't be drinking straight out of the tap without filtering it.
Okay.
Number 3, exercise. Start to move your body and sweat every day.
What about like with the doctor? Should they go get their allergies, like see what they're allergic to?
Not in my practice.
No.
Some people, yes, but for me, and look, I work with doctors. I work with doctors to help certain people get off of antidepressants. I'll work with doctors on certain things. I'm not saying never see the doctor, but if you're coming to me for something chronic, you don't need to come to me with anything. You can just come to me as you are.
And so they won't have to get allergy testing. Will you do microbiome testing or any of those kinds of things?
I don't find that I need to. Okay. I have yet to meet a client that ends up needing to do that, except for when I see something wrong and I can't get past it, then I'm like, yes, I need you to get your testicles tested for cancer. Yes, I need you to get tested for Lyme. I'm hitting a wall. So until I hit that wall, it's not really necessary for me.
Got it.
Because we change weekly. Our blood changes weekly. Everything changes weekly.
That's
hormones change weekly.
I feel like then how do you ever know if you're getting better?
I know. It's just going by how you feel, and sometimes you just have to trust the process.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you found as much value in this as I did. Share this with anybody you think needs help with Adderall or is interested in learning more about it. And where can they find you?
At at Veeshoney on Instagram and veeshoney.com. That's VEESHONEY.com.